Look up. Right now, above your roof, there is a column of empty air rising into the sky. And here is a question you have probably never asked, even though the answer touches your home, your privacy, and the drone that might hover over your fence tomorrow. Is that air yours? Do you own the sky above your house? It sounds almost silly, until you learn that a real man once lost everything he had because of it. He was a farmer. A quiet, ordinary man raising chickens on a small patch of land in North Carolina. He asked for nothing but to be left alone with his birds. And then something started falling out of the sky and killing them, not hail, not disease, but a shadow that roared past his rooftop night after night, so low he could feel it in his chest. His chickens panicked. They threw themselves against the walls of their coops and died by the dozen. His life's work collapsed, feather by feather, and he had done absolutely nothing wrong. So he did something almost no one would dare. He pointed at the sky over his own farm and said to the most powerful government on earth, "That space is mine, you are inside it, and you owe me." Unbelievably, the case went all the way to the Supreme Court of the United States. And to decide it, 9 justices had to answer a question humanity had dodged for 1,000 years. How high, exactly, does your backyard go? To understand why this was so explosive, you have to understand the rule the law had lived by for centuries. It came down from Old English common law in a single, almost poetic Latin phrase, ad coelum. The full version reads like something carved over a castle gate: whoever owns the soil owns everything up to the heavens, and everything down to the depths below. Think about what that actually means. Under that doctrine, you don't just own your lawn and your house. You own a slice of the planet shaped like an endless pillar, starting at the core of the earth beneath your feet and rising straight up, forever, past the clouds, past the birds, all the way to the stars. The air a mile above your chimney? Yours. For most of human history, this was a perfectly sensible idea, because nothing ever went up there. The tallest thing that might cross your land was a neighbor's tree branch or a church spire, and the law had simple answers for those. No one needed to ask where ownership stopped, because in practice it never had to stop. The sky was a ceiling no one could reach. And so the rule sat there, quietly absolute, for hundreds of years, a promise that the heavens over your head belonged to you and you alone. Then one morning, that ceiling filled with engines. The man at the center of our story owned a modest farm and lived there with his family, running a small but real business raising chickens for a living. His land sat near a small airport. That, by itself, was no disaster. But during this era the country was at war, and the military took over the use of that airfield, sending heavy bombers and fighters and transport planes thundering in and out at all hours. And the flight path, the invisible runway in the air that every landing plane must follow, ran directly over the farmer's property. Not near it. Over it. The aircraft came in so low on their approach that they cleared his house by barely 83 feet, skimmed above his barn, and passed only a few feet over the tallest trees on his land. Picture that. A warplane the size of a building, screaming down out of the dark so close to your roof that the windows rattle, the whole house shudders, and a blast of wind and noise slams across your yard. Then another. Then another, in daylight and in the middle of the night, again and again and again. This wasn't a plane passing high overhead as a distant speck. This was a machine tearing through the air that the farmer had always believed, under the oldest rule in the book, belonged to him. For the family, the noise and the fear and the sleeplessness were bad enough. But for the chickens, it was a slaughter. Chickens are nervous, fragile creatures, and they have no idea what a warplane is. All they knew was that a monstrous roar and a wall of wind kept exploding out of the sky directly above them. So they did what terrified animals do, they panicked. Blindly, violently, over and over, they hurled themselves into the walls of the coop trying to escape a predator they could not see. And they killed themselves doing it. not one or two. By the farmer's account, somewhere around 150 of his chickens died this way, dashing themselves to death against the walls in sheer terror as the planes came over. Production collapsed. The birds that survived were too frightened to lay. A business that had been feeding a family was destroyed, not by a competitor, not by a bad harvest, but by something happening in the air above the land, air that no plane had ever needed to use before flight existed. The farmer had lost his livelihood to an invisible highway that the government had simply decided ran through his sky. And he could not accept that it cost him nothing. So the farmer sued the United States government. And the legal theory he reached for was, when you really look at it, breathtaking in its nerve. He did not merely complain about noise. He argued that the government had committed something the Constitution takes very seriously, a taking. Under the Fifth Amendment, the government is not allowed to take your private property for public use without paying you fair compensation for it. Normally you picture that as the government seizing your land to build a road or a dam. But the farmer's claim was stranger and bolder. He said the government had taken his airspace. That the low, constant, deliberate flights through the sky directly over his farm were not a fleeting trespass but a permanent occupation of property that belonged to him, as real a taking as if soldiers had marched onto his fields and refused to leave. Give the man credit for consistency. If ad coelum was truly the law, if he really owned the heavens above his soil, then the government's planes really were parked, over and over, inside his property without permission or payment. He was simply asking the courts to mean what the law had always said. And that request dragged an ancient doctrine into a courtroom that suddenly did not know what to do with it. When the case climbed all the way to the Supreme Court, the justices found themselves cornered by their own centuries-old rule. Because think about the trap. If they said yes, if they ruled that the old doctrine held and a landowner truly owns the airspace all the way to the heavens, then every single airplane in the country, every airliner crossing above a city, every flight passing over a farm at any altitude, would be committing trespass against thousands of property owners at once. The entire age of aviation would technically be one endless, nationwide crime. You cannot fly from one coast to the other without passing over countless private parcels of land. The modern world simply could not function under ad coelum. But if the justices said the opposite, if they threw the doctrine out entirely and declared that you own nothing above your rooftop, then the farmer whose chickens had just died in terror would walk away with nothing, and any aircraft could descend to skim your chimney, day and night, and you would have no right to object at all. Both answers were impossible. The court had to find a line where, for 1,000 years, there had never needed to be one. And where they drew it still governs the sky over your head today. Here is what the Supreme Court decided, and it was a masterpiece of splitting the difference. First, they buried the ancient doctrine. The old idea that you own the sky all the way up to the heavens, the court declared, has no place in the modern world. The airspace high above us, they said, is a public highway, open to travel, belonging to everyone. No farmer owns the lane that a jetliner uses 7 miles up. That part was a clean win for aviation. But, and this is the part that saved the farmer, the court did not leave landowners with nothing. It ruled that you do own the airspace immediately above your property, at least as much of it as you can actually use and occupy in connection with your land and your home. That lower envelope of air, the space your house and trees and daily life reach into, is genuinely yours. And flights that are so low and so frequent that they directly interfere with your use of your own land are not innocent passage through a public highway. They are an invasion of the property you own. They amount to a taking, and a taking must be paid for. The farmer won. The government had, in the eyes of the law, seized a slice of his sky, and it owed him for it. 1,000-year-old rule had been cut cleanly in two. The high sky belongs to all of us, but the low sky, the air you truly live in, still belongs to you. Now here is why a case about dead chickens from decades ago should matter to you tonight. That blurry line the court drew, "You own the low airspace you can use, but not the high public highway," was never a neat number. And into that unsettled gap has flown the most disruptive machine of our time, the drone. A camera drone hovering 40 feet over your backyard, watching your kids in the pool, is nowhere near a jetliner's public highway. It is deep inside exactly the low, usable airspace the Causby case said belongs to you. That old ruling is the ghost that haunts every modern fight over where your privacy ends and the sky begins. It shapes the multi-million-dollar sale of air rights above buildings in crowded cities, where developers literally buy and sell the empty space over a rooftop. It shapes the battles over airport noise. And it is the foundation courts keep reaching for when someone asks whether the machine spying over their fence is trespassing. The farmer with the dying chickens forced the law to admit that yes, some of the sky is yours, but it never told us exactly how much. So let me hand that unfinished question to you. When a stranger's drone hovers low over your yard, is it flying through a public highway, or standing inside property that belongs to you? Tell me in the comments exactly where you would draw the line in the sky.